Put your dukes up, you don't like me, fight me. You know I keep it jumping, acting like he hypey. Think I'm bluffing, highly unlikely. Sitcom like a TV show for the 90s. Steve Urkel better scram like Vamoose. Whack half your back when I snap like Thanos. Sith Lord better go and get your best bars. War Empire blowing up like the Death Star. Power up for you, play your card, or get caught like a Pokemon. This game ain't made for clones. Lord of the Rings versus Game of Thrones. They can't stop me, stop it. Jon Snow, King of the North, I'm knocking out hobbits. Or anybody else who out of pocket. They don't really wanna see these problems, so drop it. Fight me. 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 That's my opinion. You don't like it, then fight me.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Nerd Cantina show for our second edition of the Fight Me Friday. This came up right after we walked out of Spiderman and talking with some of the fellow Cantina writers. Someone thought it was meh. I thought it was pretty good. So we haven't talked about the movie since because I said let's chamber this conversation for our second episode of Fight Me Friday. So this episode is going to be on the Spider-Man movie Far From Home that just released yesterday, which was July 2nd. It is the first movie post-Endgame for the MCU, so there was a lot left to be said in which direction the MCU is going to be heading. So just for all our listeners, this is going to have spoilers. We're not going to hold back. Give us a listen again later on in the week if you need some time to go see the movie. But we're going to get into the thick of things now. So with that said, my co-host and argue combatant today is going to be Ron. He writes for the Nerd Cantina. He's written a couple of Netflix articles and some movie reviews and TV reviews himself. Say what's up, Ron.
What's up, man?
So, you thought it was meh? Like, you didn't really enjoy it that much?
Yeah, I thought the arc wasn't great. It still has that same cheery Spider-Man vibe that you expect from every Spider-Man, like, oh, he's just a teenager, he doesn't know. I was really hoping for a leap. And mind you, I'm on the fence about Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man as a character. I think I resent Spider-Man a little bit because of all the bullshit that kind of comes with all the people.
So you're mad it was a Spider-Man movie?
No, I'm not mad that it's a Spider-Man movie. I'm mad that it was a continuation of doing the same thing over and over again, where, oh, poor me, I'm a high school student that can't talk to a girl, and like so on and so forth, and like shenanigans ensue.
Well, is that because it's a franchise that's been booted now for the third time in like 15 years? Like if this was the first two Spider-Man movies, would you feel that way? Or is it because we've had to see a Peter Parker rendition in what now? There's 3, 2, so this is like the 7th Spider-Man movie in the last 15 years.
And okay, so I completely ignore the Andrew Garfield ones. That's not a thing. That's bogus, and it didn't qualify. Unlike a lot of people, I actually liked the original Spider-Mans. Maybe
the first one.
I like the second one, and I'll tell you why. I know this sounds stupid, like, because I know everyone makes fun of like how, you know, he got dark and like went with the stupid haircut and was doing the dancing shit. Yeah, that was
the fucking jazz hand Spider-Man.
Yeah, like, jazz hand Spider-Man. But I love the arc. I love the arc that he went dark and he had demons and he had like maybe not such a clean slate. I mean, at some point,
mascara. He had mascara. Is that what you liked?
I'm not getting into the minutia of it. Yes, some things were hokey. Yes, they were. But I didn't hate it as much as everyone else did. You know, I thought Willem Dafoe was possibly one of the greatest like on-screen bad guys of all time. I'm a big Willem Dafoe kind of guy. So
yeah, Willem Dafoe is a great actor.
I tried to play someone else in that role, and it would have just tanked. I think it would have bombed. So he did that franchise.
But you get a James Franco with the Dafoe. It's a Franco Dafoe.
Right. So that was the second one, and I thought that was fantastic. This one, I mean, at some point, it's like American Pie. It's like the kid's going to be 36 years old and still like playing a high school guy. And I would like to see the character growth. I would have liked to see, some other problems I had with it was Mysterio was a disappointment to me.
Really, I enjoyed what they did with his character. I really did.
Huge Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I'm a huge Jake Gyllenhaal fan. He carried that act. The acting was superb. I could give you examples upon examples of where he carried movies. He's fantastic. And I thought he did what he could. I thought the backstory was not great.
All right. Well, before we get too far into Mysterio, let's back it up back to Spider-Man real quick.
Sure.
The fact that I think Tom Holland's the best rendition of Spider-Man we've had yet. He plays the character really well. He fits into those shoes really well. He's childish, but not too childish. You know what I mean? He's able to pull a maturity off when he needs to, but at the same time, he plays that awkward young nerd kid really well.
Even the interactions in, Captain America Civil War, the interactions he's had with the awe that he had with fighting his heroes, I thought that was done incredibly well. I love the writing for him. I really enjoyed the role that they put him in. If you remember the little quibs that he had while he's fighting, Captain America, while, he's like ad-libbing basically with him.
Yeah.
He's fighting. I thought that was done incredibly well. So, I don't have a problem with Tom Holland whatsoever. I think he's a fantastic Spider-Man. I know there's been some stuff on the internet like, oh, Spider-Man should be American. Like, dude, grow up. I mean, that stuff is bullshit. Like, oh, he's British. So
I don't click those ones.
I don't click that either. That's bullshit. I actually do. I click them just to see the stupidity appear before my eyes. But, I don't have a problem with Tom Holland. I loved him in it. I don't think really Jake Gyllenhaal did anything wrong. I just thought the writing kind of laxed. I thought the story arc kind of laxed, and they went for a very simple version of it where...
Well, what did you think about the misdirection that they played? So they give you this notion that it's Jake Gyllenhaal from another dimension, and you have this big worry that they're just going to take that endgame kind of like mentality and expand on it. But in actuality... They pulled it all back. Like they reined it.
They completely did. And I understand what they were doing. They're trying to pull it back down to earth level. And I thought that was a noble kind of way to do it. Unfortunately, I think coming off something as grandiose as Infinity War and, the whole Thanos saga, mind you, I go into these movies not as a comic book fan at all. So I come into it with a blank slate. So I know there's a portion of people that are true to comics, so they want a certain arc, that resembles what they've seen. I don't. I go into it seeing it. This is going to be a standalone movie for me. This has no resemblance to the comics. So, in my mind, and I got pretty good at this, just being completely skeptical. I'm pretty good at kind of seeing where things are going to be played out. My own philosophy on it was, I thought that he did come from a different dimension. I thought that there was a rip, and I did think he was the bad guy. And obviously Mysterio, I mean, you can't avoid the fact that Mysterio has always been the bad guy, but I thought he might have been from a different dimension. And I thought he was mad at our world for ending his. And I thought that would have been a great story arc. I thought that would have been, giving the illusions and all that other stuff together with it. I thought that would have made it.
Well, see, I actually, that's kind of like what I enjoyed about it is the fact that Mysterio is a reality-altering, mind, bending villain, and to not use a magic medium or a special powers medium, but a technology medium to achieve the same kind of characteristics that he's known for. I thought it was actually really innovative. I thought it was really good. The fact that they used a technology already talked about in the previous movies to push that ahead, to tie it all in. The fact that they didn't use the multiverse and go face first into this big mess of a fucking problem they created in writing Endgame in the first place. The fact that they reined it all in and made it more of we're just on Earth, guys. This is just shit going on. Just shit going on with these people. Like, don't worry about outer space. Don't worry about big thing over here, big thing over there. Let's just focus on what's our little story is right here. And I was really happy to see them kind of be able to do that and not dip into that sci-fi well that they promoted they were going to. You know, they did like the bait and switch essentially because I
don't you? I mean, in what they're doing at this point, the stakes are so high, right? They can't afford a flop by no means. So at this point, they're upping the ante as much as they can. And I thought this was a solid gamble. I didn't hate the movie. I just didn't like where they didn't take the chance. So let me ask you this. What did you think of, did you stay for the end credits?
Yes, I did.
What did you think of them? Can you give me
the first end credit? I loved the fact that they got the same actor to play Jay Jonah and they're bringing Jay Jonah in it. I love that. The fact that they're going to go more with the newspaper, or this will probably be like an online blog or talk show host. The fact that they're going to make him seem that Spider-Man to be the bad guy. I think the third movie is going to be more of your neighborhood friendly Spider-Man type movie.
You think so? You think they can go back to something like that at this point?
Because they're bringing in Jay Jonah, so it's got to stay kind of local.
New York, right? So it has to be New York. And by the way, Jay Jonah it's such a great performance.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
I thought that was quirky. There's a part of me that didn't really agree with it, and even though he probably is the greatest actor to play that role, even though it's minor, it does make a lot of sense. But the fact that it cross-contaminated for me from other movies, I really didn't.
What, he had some Sony spunk still on him? Like, is that what you're worried about?
A little bit. Yeah, like there was a little bit of residue that I was hoping wouldn't be there. And again,
no, that's Jay Jonah. He is Jay Jonah. I'm really excited that they got him to do it again and just carry out, like, because when you nail it, you nail it. Like, you can't. Right,
but at the same time, distancing yourself from the previous failures, I think there's something to that. Again, I don't hate it.
Those aren't Disney's failures. Those aren't Marvel's failures. So fuck those. Like, so you know what I mean? There's
going to be a skeptic in me that just, whenever I see everyone kind of falling over something, I'm going to go, wait, is this the case? And also the fact that they set up basically the franchise based on an end credit scene also bothers me. You kind of gather the same thing I did, where they said, basically the next movie.
Well, they outed Peter Parker. Peter Parker. He's the enemy of the people. Yeah, he's the enemy. Now he's the villain.
Yeah.
Or they're going to portray him that way. MJ knows, his best friend knows, his aunt knows.
Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you that an end credit scene is such a pivotal point in his life?
They got to give, they're notorious for the end scenes, and you kind of got to put something in there that is worth staying for.
This is the opposite field of that. This is basically
bullshit. This was a big payoff to sit through some credits. Like, it was a big payoff.
Well, at this point, it's like a norm to sit through the end credits. I personally don't. I go home, and the first day of the movie comes out, I go on the internet and see it, because I'm like, you know what? These people are assholes sitting here. No, you're not going to catch me in that. I go home, look it up on the internet. Some dick videotaped it, so I'll watch that. For a great example is that Endgame, the money grab that they had with the unfinished Hulk. That's ridiculous. That was ridiculous to me. So I didn't expect much of this, but I kind of felt almost stolen from the fact that
I didn't like the second one, the one at the end with the Skrulls. I don't like what they're doing with the Skrulls. This is one of the things that I didn't enjoy about the movie. They're making them seem like these campy refugees that I should feel sorry for, instead of the intergalactic fucking menace of villains that they really are.
Why are they pointing them towards that way? So again, you are the guru of comics, so definitely take the lead in this. The little that I do know is that they are kind of like you said, a menace. They're almost like a bothersome.
I think they're trying to do another bait and switch. So I think they want movie fans like you to not know what a Skrull really is or should be. So when they actually turn out to be the mega villains of the next phase of Marvel, that it's like a surprise to you. But for me, as someone who's read comics.
I mean, is it, even if I take myself away from anything I've ever read in comics or ever heard a nerd talk about, I'm basically stuck between here's a creature that definitely has an ability, right? And it's an ability for espionage. It's basically
one of the best Marvel crossover events they ever did in comics was Secret Invasion, and it was all about a Skrull takeover, and it was the art was phenomenal. The writing was great. They did some crazy concepts with it. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that we're aiming towards a Secret Invasion themed.
I'm just saying they already taste like a villain. I mean, so during Captain Marvel, the entire time, like, they're the villain. They're the villain.
Well, and like, I just didn't. So, like, it just didn't feel right. So you mean to tell me that Nick Fury is okay with just some sissy alien like acting like he is him, and like nobody notices that Fury is just kind of like...
Nick Fury is okay with someone impersonating him?
And not even well.
Not well at all, yeah.
Not well. And so, like, that's one of the things that did bother me. Took a couple points away from it. You know, I didn't like it. How did you feel about how the movie started and wrapped up kind of that big mess of what happened when everybody went away, like the whole blip, you know, the band leaving the gym in dust, and then later on in another assembly, boom, they pop up in a basketball game. Like, so honestly, I really enjoyed it. Like, they did it they summed up all the questions you had going into it right away, and in a fun way that kind of explains it. And I like the term blip, like oh yeah, he blipped back. Like, he's
some of that was exceptional writing, and I really loved the High School Morning News version of it.
The High School Morning News version, like, it was the best way to tell it all.
It was fantastic. I thought that was fantastic.
Because Endgame had so much weight to it, right?
And this lightens the load. This is
it let the air back in the room and did it in a fun way.
And I think we've disagreed on this before, but I'm glad you're on this now. But I love, like, Thor Ragnarok. To me, I thought that was like a the ice cream in the middle of a heavy meal, like a palate cleanser, like something a little more fun, something a little offshoot. Like, I thought the comedy and stuff.
Ragnarok had to grow on me. I will admit that. Like, when I walked out of the theater initially, I really didn't enjoy what they did with the Thor character.
Why not?
Because the first two movies were him, like, growing with his powers. You know, this third movie, he really came into his God of Thunder role. Yeah. And in the first two movies, he was noble and you know, like, that was the theme. I think is like he was the comedic relief in the Avengers movie, but only because he was like this god out of place. They didn't make him like the comedic character. They made his situation the comedic situation. So in the third movie, to make him the actual comedy relief, I just didn't agree with it. After watching it a bunch of times, like, no, I do enjoy the movie. I really do. You
don't feel like he grew as, like, he became more human, I feel like, through the Marvel movies, and where he was, I hate to keep using the word arc, but if you look at his arc, like, where he started, where he was incredibly stiff, like with the Natalie Portman Thors, and where he was, very fish out of water.
It was too much of a jump at once, I guess you would say. Okay. So I'm not upset necessarily with the character growth. Although I hated Fat Thor. So I hated
okay. So to me, that was also a little extreme. I mean, that was like, let's put a fat suit on him. That's something a high school play would do, right? I mean, like, oh, how can we make this character funny? Let's put a fat suit on him. I mean, don't forget, like, just
to me, it was more of an attempt to weaken his character, that he was too overpowered by the
why make him
by
the
end of
in where he was, inches away from killing Thor, or I'm sorry, Thanos, where he was inches away from killing Thanos. So if he's the one that's like the closest to being an equivalent.
Honestly, bottom line, I think it was contracts were coming up. Helmsworth's expensive. They wanted to pass the torch to Captain Marvel, so they weakened Thor, they strengthen her, and now we're off into the next phase of Marvel, the MCU story arc, and Thor's not going to be. And they needed to pull him back, I think, and that's why they did it.
Well, and the other thing is, I walked in, and again, I'm not like a regular guy, right? I kind of do my research, and I love Taika Waititi. Like, I thought I kind of knew what would happen with Thor when I realized he's going to be directing. And I'm a big fan of his. He always inserts himself into these movies, which I didn't know how that was going to happen in this, and I thought it was brilliant. With him, and although I wasn't, what was the character's name that he played? The rock guy,
Korg.
Yeah. I thought he didn't get enough screen time on that, but I understand.
Well, see, so Korg, Meek and Hulk, they took all those characters from the best Hulk story ever written in Planet Hulk. Like, I actually
know Planet Hulk, believe it or not.
So I part of me, like a little bit in me, was just like a little upset that, like, if they're gonna give us a little bit of Planet Hulk now in that movie, then I'm never going to get the big epic Planet Hulk.
And why not the standalone Hulk movie? I mean, he is top 3 characters for most people. Why not the standalone? I mean, I understand the reluctance because of the past failures, like the Edward Norton one, and who was the first guy? The Australian guy, right? It didn't do well because I feel like you're basically stuck with either a very personal storyline or incredible CGI. And I think finding that middle ground, like Marvel does, is hard for that.
They've done a better job in it in the last rendition. I think CGI caught up to a point where...
Right, where as that was like we're going to do the storyline in this studio, and then
it's the difference between CGI and motion capture. Mm-hmm. So I think with the dawn of motion capture, it made it more relatable.
So I know we're like way off subject, but I'm going to ask you one last question. What do you think about the smart Hulk bullshit? And you can tell from my tone already that where
I did like the way they do it in the comics every once in a while, but after the way he got his ass beat by Thanos,
right,
he needed some redemption, and it didn't need to be in the form of a Banner Hulk. It needed to be in the form of Hulk. I'm the strongest there. I'm the strongest there is.
How did he become from the strongest Avenger to the weakest Avenger to a fucking crybaby coward? And now,
and the whole spot where he's in the past and he's like, they're like, break some stuff, and he's like,
yeah. And then
I'm not a fan. And that's why I really didn't enjoy that movie that much.
So my favorite 2 characters of all time were always Hulk and Wolverine. And one of my, like you talked about your crossovers, my favorite crossover was always Wolverine versus Hulk. I thought that was something that should have been done on the screen. I still don't understand why X-Men and Marvel had never had that crossover. At this point, it's way too late. But I always thought that was...
Well, actually, at this point, it just needs to be rebooted because now Disney owns them all.
What, are you talking about X-Men?
Yeah.
That's a bag of garbage. But... that's
the thing is Marvel now owns the X-Men. They're going to reboot them all, so you can still get a Hulk Wolverine in a movie in the future.
But I mean, so you obviously probably read the Thanos Infinity Gauntlet in the comic version, right? Where they're going 2 by 2, and Thanos is basically finding incredibly creative ways to kill each Avenger or X-Men. And I thought that was something that was kind of missed out on. I thought that was, to me, comics-wise, and again, I'm nowhere near. I'm about 5% of what you are at comics. I thought that was possibly the greatest thing I've ever witnessed comic-wise. Like that fight between them.
Yeah, I mean, it was
incredible writing,
and they took away the whole death aspect of the story arc too.
Yeah, and I know we talked about this a few days ago with we had our problems, and I thought I forgot to mention that it was a cop out to have only 4 characters die. I thought it was a giant cop out, and Spider-Man. So to circle back around Spider-Man. It may be when they listed the 4 that died, it's basically 4, right? It was Vision, Iron Man.
But at the end, that's at the end of the resolution, of it all.
You don't feel like that's also a cop-out? I mean, to me, that was kind of bullshit. Like, you basically wiped out half the Avengers, right? And then they come
half
back.
The OG, yeah, half the OG Avengers.
Come back, of course, like they do, because nobody's going to go see a movie with half of them. And you basically kill off 4 kind of fringe characters other than Iron Man. I mean, the 3 other ones, are,
Captain America.
Captain America, technically didn't die, right? He went off on his own. But, Black Widow, which, again, was the most overrated character I've ever seen, and Vision, who was completely under the radar, the entire Marvel franchise, who I thought had possibly...
Yeah, they didn't ever really use.
They never really don't. What do you remember him for? You remember him for basically almost killing
Scarlet Witch's babysitter for an entire movie.
Some whiny bitch, and he also shot one of his own guys. That was like the 2 things you remember him. He's a whiny bitch, and he shot one of his own guys by accident.
But I mean the fact that Tony Stark played a huge role in the Spider-Man movie just because they wanted to reflect that the world recognized what they did. So I think that was a good point. That
was nice.
The fact that Spider-Man's idol is everywhere. He's constantly reminded of Tony Stark's death.
Yeah.
Because they don't really play on the Uncle Ben aspect in this version of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So the fact that his mentor is died and he feels this obligation to live up to his mentor is kind of taking that with great power comes great responsibility tone.
But it was, so again, we're circling back, but it was just incredibly predictive. And not because I know about Mysterio, but when he's sitting at that bar and he's basically handing off the glasses, really? You hand off.
That's what I didn't like. I didn't like the fact that that it was that easy to hand.
I thought we were supposed to be arguing.
This is there's 2 things I didn't like about it. So there's 2 things I was going to agree with you on. I knew going into this.
Sure.
And this is one of them. Like the fact that Tony Stark doesn't have fail safes so that a kid can't just hand over the nuke codes.
You think he the most paranoid person ever? Right, the most paranoid, smartest person ever doesn't have a failsafe, so if he can't just hand them over. So come on, anyone with a brain knows that. If he doesn't want the glasses, they are not transferable. Okay, they're not transferable because he's not ready, or for whatever reason, or he tries to give them away. That would be a mistake. So the most, in the words of Happy, the most paranoid person ever just basically gave him the reins to.
And not to mention it was nothing for him to send a drone strike on a 16-year-old kid that he couldn't even figure out how to stop.
Yeah, what was that?
And the thing that probably bothers me the most is, so he looks at the glasses, he looks around the school bus, and it pulls up everybody's profile. Yeah. This person this person that, what they're texting on their phones, everybody's profile. He puts the glasses on when he looks at Jake Gyllenhaal. It can't tell him.
Doesn't come up with anything that this guy worked for fucking Tony Stark.
That he worked.
How did it not fucking understand this? Are you kidding me? The guy you're handing off the glasses to, you're not going to put him on to check his ass out?
And that's the thing is when he
I
was
trust
wearing the
you.
glasses around him, it didn't show up that he was a former fucking
Fucking
Stark
employee. He was
fired
a
this
fucking
dude. Like,
employee.
yeah, they have the file, like they have a literal file on this
You would
dude.
have more information on him than anyone on Earth. Like
Yeah.
he's
So yeah, I didn't like the whole Edith aspect of
I
the
didn't like that.
storyline.
That was bullshit too. Again, Mysterio to me in the comics was always a pretty interesting character, not a supervillain that you can kind of get behind, right? So I like a lot of bad guys. I identify with a lot of bad guys. I like them. I like Venom is like one of my favorites. Magneto is one of my favorites. But you understand, yeah, there's a certain personal aspect to it, but at the same time, there's also this incredible power that comes with it, right? That kind of draws you in. With Mysterio, it was kind of
revenge. It was revenge.
It was a revenge plot that he fools people in, and if you're
it was revenge turned into like a power shift, because at first he did it because Stark took his tech and named it Barf, and he was all pissed off about it. But then once they came up with his plan and he realized that he could pivot it into having immense power, then it became a power grab. So it started off as a revenge story, ended up being a power grab kind of story. And
I liked Mysterio in the comics where he actually had powers. I mean, there weren't powers the way.
See, I don't mind that. I like the fact that they did something original, but still in the wheelhouse of the character. So like they're always going to do changes. I don't like the changes when they drastically change the character type.
Right.
They made a drastic change in the character, but they didn't change the character type at all. It was still the same methods. It was just a different, way that he was able to carry that through. It's technology rather than magic.
Again, my theory was because and I think your heart, like half your heart is with Marvel and half your heart is with the comics. And I feel like that would cloud your vision about it, and I think you have to make a choice whether you're going to be
I just want respect held for the original writing they made. They're gifted 100 years of great storytelling. Sure. They're like these movie studios are just gifted these well crafted characters and these great story arcs. So for them, a lot of times arrogantly to think that they can just do something better. That's a lot of what DC's problem is they think they can reinvent the wheel. And it's like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You could change the rims.
Right.
You could change the rims. You could go murdered out. You could get some chrome ones, but either way, it's still the wheel. And I think that's what Marvel does a pretty good job at.
Do. If you're comparing the two, the DC Comics versus Marvel, there's no competition. Marvel personally to me has weaker characters. If you ever line them up against each other, I think Marvel has weaker characters. I think half the Avengers are not actual superheroes. They're just like one.
That's the big question mark for DC is how do you have some of the most iconic comic book
and still fail
history and still fail
because it's too much, right? It's too much firepower, and it's hard to make these characters that are so extreme.
It's like going bowling and letting someone stand in front of the pins and still rolling a gutter ball,
right?
Like you could kick them over. How do you throw that ball in a gutter still?
And to me, it's like how do you? Batman himself deserves a franchise, and we've seen him. Superman himself deserves a franchise. Wonder Woman has a standalone. By the way, Wonder Woman is the only surprise.
But that's the credit you got to give to Marvel is that they created a franchise out of Ant-Man. They created a franchise out of Guardians of the Galaxy who nobody knew who the fuck they were.
Hold on, but Guardians of the Galaxy, if you really take it apart, if you really want to pick things apart, Guardians of the Galaxy is a space movie with that's not really connected to Marvel and just kind of hodgepodged into it later.
It's Marvel.
If you take the comics out of it, and it's a great standalone movie. But when you have things like Black Widow coming up, What is that movie fucking about? Who gives a
See,
shit?
I'm a Black Widow fan. I always thought she
How
was
are
a
you a
strong
Black Widow
female
fan?
character.
What are you?
Because I thought, cause well, if you can't, so I will give you that opinion if you're consistent in saying I don't like Hawkeye either.
I don't.
Okay,
I like him as
so
Ronan.
that's fine.
I like him as
So
Ronan, and it's a very Deadpool-y thing to me, where he's like a jaded person that wants to.
if you have the opinion of just like how do these normal people compete with all these superheroes,
Yeah, what are you
like
doing?
that's a valid opinion. But for assuming that they're all contributing, maybe not equally, but they're all contributing.
I'm sorry.
She's a strong character. She's portrayed real. She was great in Winter Soldier.
Hold on. Their liability.
She was great in Winter Soldier.
If this was the real world, let's say superheroes did fucking exist, right? They are liabilities and be kicked out, and they'd be working in a computer room somewhere because that's what they'd be doing. Because there would be a fucking liability. Because if Hulk has to stop fighting someone to save her ass or Hawkeye's ass, that's a liability, right? The weakest link is what fucks everything up, right? And that's just not realistic to me. So, like, again,
there's a difference between being the weak link and having to have your ass saved every once in a while, because Captain America has had to have his ass saved. Iron Man has had to have his ass saved. So, like, that's part of being That's the part of being on a team ensemble, is that you save each other's ass.
Horseshit.
Now,
you ever played a pickup game with a bunch of people that were way fucking better than you?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you feel about 5 minutes into it?
I mean, you realize, like, I'm a little out of my element here.
Okay. And you go, maybe I'm going to wait for the next game. You know what I mean? You don't go, yeah, these guys are running up and down the court, and I'm just going to try to trudge with them.
No, you say fuck that. You find your niche, and you do you find your role, and you fill your role.
Idealist in you, but really what you do is you go, I can't compete. I'm not good enough for this. I back the fuck away. Now multiply that by 1,000. I'm not talking about people shooting hoops. I'm talking about people saving the fucking world. A guy like Thor stands up against Thanos. He might get his ass beat, right? But he's not gonna fucking die. You put Black Widow up against.
Well, no one asked Black Widow to fight Thanos. They asked her
to
take some of the B team to fight, keeping the B team off the big guys' back. Everyone. Hey man, someone's got to set the pick in the pick and roll.
Where the fuck was the armies of the world in that fight? Like, who was people just sitting around waiting for?
They didn't need them. They
didn't need them. So, like, hey guys, I know this is a global issue, but like, no, I mean I know I'm going off on a tangent, but honestly, it's a thought. It's a thought that, like, what, only Avengers get to fight the world threat? No, we have fighter planes and all this other shit, but you guys go ahead. You think in any reality that would happen?
It happened too fast.
It happened
Armies take days to mobilize.
Can I just tell you, I love that I put you in a position where you're making excuses for people you do not fucking associate with.
I mean, it's you gotta rationalize how it's gonna work. I mean, if you want to really get down to the nitpicking, you're always gonna find implausibility.
Tell me some dude wouldn't.
It's where you draw your line.
And tell me some dude wouldn't set up a bunch of fucking nukes as soon as Thanos showed up on Earth.
You're drawing your line a little further than because, like, what are the nukes gonna do? He could just look at those nukes and they turn into noodles, big ass masticholi noodles.
They're not going to try.
Do nothing.
You tell if we have a current president like that in that movie, in that scenario, the first thing he does is launch nukes. But all right, we're getting off topic. So I'm going to back up.
You keep running. You keep running off the trail.
Sorry, I have a lot to fucking gripe about. I'm pissed off about this. I kind of expect. And by the way, what do you think? You think he's dead?
Yeah.
Mysterio's dead?
I mean.
So what was that last bit? The last bit where he took the hard drive, or the USB out of the hard drive, was that intended for Spider-Man's the bad guy, or do you think that was something else?
That was intended for Spider-Man's the bad guy.
Okay.
That's setting up the next story arc.
So just like that, Mysterio's gone, and at this point, they're not going to go back to the Green Goblin, and no matter what they do, unless he's a completely different character from the comics. right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's gonna be up in there where they take the rest of the MCU, because now that they finally have their hands on the Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
you know, there might be a Spider-Man appearance in a Fantastic
Are
Four
you a fan
movie.
of the Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I mean, I think you do a lot. Doom is the best villain in
Doom
Marvel.
and the Silver Surfer. That's it. Everyone else can fuck off.
You know, the like if I want a Doom, I gotta have a Fantastic Four. And if they do it right, it can be done well. You know, Reed Richards is huge in the comic book universe.
He is, but
there's like no other more important man in the Marvel universe than Reed Richards.
yeah, I get that, but he's like the equivalent of Cyclops to me, where in the Marvel universe he's like this special person, but when you put him on film, it's gone to shit. He shoots lasers, big fucking deal. Like Reed Richards.
If you can make a Tony Stark work, you should be able to make a Reed Richards work.
Tony Stark, hold up. Tony Stark is a lot different than that. Tony Stark has basically the world's arsenal at his disposal. So yeah, he might not be a superhero himself, but he's a superhero in the fact that he's not only a multi-billionaire, and he's also got a brain that's probably the smartest.
But that's the thing, is if you can take a high intelligence character and make them a focal point and draw an audience, like, it shouldn't be hard.
Part of the charm of Tony Stark is he's a guy you. Sorry. Oh no. Shit.
What did you do?
He knocked it over again.
I'm sorry, I knocked it over again, man. Are you with me?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm good. It's
Part of the
good.
charm of Tony Stark is he's a guy you kind of want to hate. He's the kind of guy you really don't want to like.
That's the thing with the Spider-Man now, is that they've idolized him to now like Jesus levels,
right,
because he saved the world. So he's the most beloved character in the movie universe.
You think so? You're saying in the movie universe?
Yeah, I mean, there's murals of the guy everywhere. It's statues.
But that was well done. Again, he's a billionaire playboy that you want to fucking hate, and he turns you. That's why it works. I mean, without Iron Man, I think that franchise is limited at best. Tony Stark turns you from hating him to absolutely loving him and identifying with him. Whereas Reed Richards is a fucking smart nerd that doesn't give a shit about money or anything like that, and is just like fucking nerding it up. He's the guy from Chess Club that tells you not to, talk bad to your girlfriend. Like he's a fucking dork. Like you know what I mean? I don't know if you identify with that. I don't know if you
don't, but he's not a character you have to identify with. I mean, there's plenty of characters in the Marvel universe that you can't identify with necessarily.
Yeah, but you have the lead horses, right? You have, Iron Man, the playboy. You have Spider-Man is like your kid that just got this stuff thrusted on him. You have Captain America that's always gung-ho for, got a hard on for America always. And you can identify. You can find somebody to identify with.
I'm sorry, I don't. You might be able to identify with the Russian agent. I don't identify with the Russian agent. Well, I don't identify with Hawkeye. Like, I understand his character.
Hawkeye's not a Russian agent.
I don't identify with it. You know.
Well, okay, so not Hawkeye per se. I'm just saying you could.
No, it's a Black Widow's the Russian agent, but I'm just saying, like, there's characters
Romanoff,
that
right?
You don't have to you don't have to identify with them to understand the character.
I think you can find. I think people connect with the Marvel universe because they can find.
Yeah, we're gonna have to rename this episode to Spider-Man and MCU discussion, because you can't, seriously, we're supposed to do a half hour on the Spider-Man movie, and
all right, let's go back to the Spider-Man movie.
We've gone a half hour on fucking Endgame and the MCU.
All right, so Spider-Man movie didn't do enough for me. I thought the writing was really boring. I thought they could have done a lot more with the arc. I'm kind of tired of him being this weakling little teenager guy that's awkward.
But you can't be tired of the second movie. Like, that's the thing, is that you can be tired of it because you've seen so many Spider-Man movies, but this is a reboot of the Spider-Man. So this is only the second rendition of Spider-Man. You can't be tired of what is essentially the Spider-Man character, a young kid dealing with having powers, trying to have a normal life.
How many years in a row?
This is the second movie. It's the second movie. And he blipped. And he blipped. He didn't age. He's like they picked it up right where he left off.
I think Venom should have been the villain here. I think it would have been fucking killer. I think it would have been.
They didn't have the rights to Venom in time to do it.
I get that part, but with enough money, anything's possible. I'm just saying, bring back the Green Goblin, bring someone back like that. Mysterio, and then he dies in the end. It felt like a cash grab.
They're trying to use original characters. They've already done Green Goblin. I like the fact that they did a Vulture.
This one,
who the fuck thought they were going to do Vulture? The fact that they're using Mysterio. They have an arsenal of all these fucking characters. Why do we need to recycle? Why do we need to recycle the same ones that we've seen?
Because those are the story arcs you want to see. Because you say you like, the obscure characters. I say it's fodder, because that's what it feels like to me. They're just like throwing a guy out. Here's some money. We're going to make some money, and we don't have to use up a character. And it goes back to the original. I know you hate me for this, but it goes back to the Infinity Wars, where 4 fucking people out of 1,000 died. To me, it feels like a cop out and a money grab. That's what it felt like to me. I don't know.
Well, they honored 4 people. They could say that other people died in no names.
Who out of the superheroes really died?
Yeah, but there's what, 18 superheroes. There was thousands of people in that battle. A bunch of Wakandans fucking died. I'll tell you that.
I know they sound.
I tell you that. Bunch of fucking Wakandans died.
That's
But they just memorialized the main 4 that died in the movie.
Yeah.
You gotta at least give it credit for being able to take this giant, so the MCU started off huge and then funneled down tight into this mini, one movie, and now in order to build another big story arc, this one movie has the responsibility of being able to branch off into multiple storylines and multiple things going on.
But that's my point. Is that this was when you hit a grand slam, right? You hit a grand slam. You can't go out and just fucking get a walk. You just can't. You have to. This movie had expectations on it that were maybe unfair, but to make it into a Euro trip filled with Mysterio is not, to me, was a cop out and basically a prolonging of something that really should have.
See, I think I disagree. I think it was just the right amount of everything you needed to get the engines fired back up again. Like, you didn't need to carry on Endgame. You needed to hit the reset button. And I think it hit the reset button and really well in a way that leaves you some room to build. It carries the franchise forward. I think the next few Marvel movies have a lot more weight. I think the fact that Spider-Man was able to carry that weight and do fine.
Spider-Man's the only one left.
Interesting
to you, that's coming up.
There's another Doctor Strange movie coming out.
That's mediocre. Black Widow sucks.
They're doing some shows on Disney Plus. Like, there's going to be a lot that's going to
Let me ask you
aim the direction of the next big major.
The next phase. Who are you interested in seeing? Like the way you were when this all began, where you saw
Guardians, and Doctor Strange.
Okay, Guardians.
Sure.
That's it. Maybe the next Spider-Man movie will be, something else. But honestly, Guardians. And I'm still bitter at the Guardians because I love Chris Pratt, and I love Chris Pratt as that. I was actually hoping that they would be the Asgardians of the Galaxy, but that was...
Again, you're taking the conversation away from Spider-Man.
Okay, fine. It was mediocre. It was mediocre, and I felt like it did enough for people to pay lots of money and for them to earn another $1 billion. I felt like it was kind of dull. They hired someone as a writer to fill these like little joke spots in. It just felt formulaic. It felt like it didn't do enough where it felt like they could have done more with Mysterio. It always bothers me.
I think the expectation levels are still need to be reined in at post Endgame.
I agree. Maybe you're right, but at the same time, I just don't buy that he's the only superhero available to save the Earth. That part of it bothers me. It's just like a cop out. There's a lot with it that I just, I don't know. Like Green Goblin thing. If Green Goblin was the bad guy in this, and the story was rewritten, I would have believed it. I would have been like, all right, this is.
See, I just don't understand the concept of who the villain is matters.
It matters.
Why does it matter?
Of course it matters.
Why?
If there's a world-ending event, you're telling me no one's calling anybody else.
It wasn't a world-ending event. It was faked.
To Mysterio, if the guy destroyed his version of Earth, right? The fire elemental, he destroyed his Earth. So if they didn't,
but he also told them he knew how to solve it. He also told them he's like, I had it under control in my world. I'll get it under control in this world.
Okay, but
he said he only failed on the last one. He only failed on the last one.
To me, I would be like, hey, let's bring everybody fucking in because this guy failed the first time. I don't. It felt.
And he explained why they couldn't bring everybody in. Thor wasn't around.
Come on.
A lot of people are dead.
No, this is you.
And like who's gonna help? Are you gonna get Falcon? Falcon's gonna fucking fight these motherfuckers. Like
hero, but at least he would have been there. You tell me you wouldn't call him?
No, because he's just gonna die. Why waste him? Like you don't fucking pull your queen out right after you move your first fucking pawn. Like you.
So Falcon is your queen?
No, I'm just saying, like you don't waste a piece just to throw him out there. Like you don't, like if he's not going to contribute and if he's not going to survive.
Ending event, and the only people left on Earth from the 50 fucking superheroes that we discovered is Spider-Man, and that's the only person they're like, this is enough for us. We're okay. The guy that doubts himself and does stupid decisions all the time. This is enough for us, and whatever happens, happens.
Because at the point you're fighting a 2-story water monster, a wind guy, like really, it's to them, they were skeptical of Mysterio too. Like, is this really a world-ending event? It was a 2-story water monster. It was a 2-story water monster that knocked down a couple buildings and flooded his shit. Hulk tore the fuck out of New York.
Yeah,
these world-ending monsters,
right?
Did some damage. Like it was
okay. Let's just say for a second, you're a world leader, or just of anyone that has you might have a say.
See, you're taking your line too far. You're taking
Why do you think
the
that?
minute because if you want to enjoy a movie, you draw a line at a reasonable.
Okay, I do.
You draw a line at a reasonable
edge.
Make
it a global scale fucking thing. Then you can't have it both ways. You just can't. You can't say the world might end and then be like, we're cool without anybody else, even though we have these people at disposal. You can't have it
technically anytime they see something they don't know, they can say the world might end, and
right.
it's a common trope just to put some gravity on the subject. Like, no, they shouldn't use it all the time. Like, the world isn't always going to end anytime a fucking bad guy comes.
Giant fire elemental, I think, qualifies.
Like, I mean, it depends on who you're asking. It's like.
All right. Listen, I'm with you on this. I like buying
Thor fought fire elementals all day, son. That's
right.
What he did for
this. That would be the person I'd call. I'd be like, maybe not the self-questioning fucking pubescent fucking Spider-Man that can't make a decision, and maybe not some new guy that showed up and said his world fucking died. Maybe bringing a guy that fights fire elementals. There's holes.
I draw my line pretty far, but you're drawing yours way further than me.
I just think there's holes.
Just enjoy the story.
If you want to pick it apart, you can, but you can do that to any movie, and I'm happy to just buy into it. But if you want to go down the rabbit hole, I can find holes in any fucking movie. But to me, this was, again, to back this up, is I thought it was a kind of a cop out. I thought Mysterio was fodder, and I thought the writing was kind of bunk. That's what I thought. You know.
All right. Well, I disagree. I thought I enjoyed it. I thought that it did its job. It towed the line where it needed to be towed and set things up in a it let the air back in the room after a movie like Endgame. It sucked all the air out of the room.
I think it was
this kind of let everybody breathe again. Yeah. It's letting everybody breathe. It's advancing not only this franchise but the MCU. I think it did a good job. So
what do you think is next for Spider-Man?
Next for Spider-Man, I think they're going to take it back to New York and do a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man deal. You know,
and the world hates him.
Yeah, where Joey Jonah tries to pitch him to be a bad guy. He's trying to find a way to handle that, and I think it's going to go back to some traditional Spider-Man stories, which I'm excited to see where they take it. But I mean, with the way they pivot on these movies, who the fuck knows where they're going?
Is there a chance of Venom versus Spider-Man at any point?
Yeah, I think that's actually more likely, given the fact that they own Venom now. It'd be stupid not to use them in that way. It's a 100% money grab, so they'd be dumb not to do it. All right, let's wrap this up before we go off on another tangent. That's basically what we got. If if you're on the side of liking it or disliking it, if you agree with one or the other, let us know in the comments, or leave a voicemail line. Other than that, I'm going to stick with my opinion. Ron's going to stick with his, and I'm going to go see the next one. That's for sure.
Who is not? Come on, who's not going to go see it? Of course, we all are.
Until next time, where we stumble upon two opposing sides. We'll see you next time, folks.